I was packing my last boxes. It was my final night alone in the small apartment I had lived in for 8 years. My boyfriend was waiting for me to move in with him. I stacked the boxes carefully. Clothes, pots, books, it felt normal. I thought about how nice it would be to share a space with him. The night was quiet, just how I liked it. I didn't know I would remember this night forever. Around 10 p.m., I started hearing a sound. At first, it was a faint scratching coming from the wall shared with my neighbor. I paused, unsure. The landlord often said he had noisy tenants. Maybe it was him again. I went back to packing, but the scratching continued. It got louder, rhythmic, and strange. My skin crawled, but I brushed it off. I focused hard on my tasks. A little while later, the lights began to flicker. The shadows danced across my walls, and the scratching intensified. I shivered. The hallway felt colder, like a breeze creeping under the door. I felt uneasy, but kept working. Boxes piled up in a corner, and the muffled voices drifted through the wall. They were too quiet to understand, but they didn't stop. What was happening? I stood up and walked to the wall. I pressed my ear against it. I could hear my heart racing in my ears. All I could make out were those dreadful scratching and soft whispers. I felt goosebumps crawl up my arms. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was wrong. I walked back to my boxes and tried to ignore it. I paced around my apartment, growing more anxious. The scratching persisted, now rhythmic, like a heartbeat. I felt trapped in my own home. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a shadow move in the hallway. I turned quickly to look, but nothing was there, just the flickering lights. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Would someone help me? I grabbed my phone, thinking of calling someone, but I didn't. I felt frozen. The walls seemed alive with that scratching, and the voices were growing clearer. I couldn't tell what they were saying. My heart raced faster as the noise continued, thumping in my mind. I moved to the door, ready to leave, but it felt like the walls were closing in on me. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the wall. I jumped back in terror. That noise felt heavy and menacing. I could barely breathe now, feeling as if something strange was watching me. I backed away, and the lights flickered one last time before going out completely. Darkness enveloped me. In that moment, I heard a voice whisper clearly, "Let me out." I scrambled, searching for any light or a way out, but I could only picture those walls closing in. I never lived in that apartment again, and I never learned what was there. Each night since, I've thought about that voice, wondering if it's still waiting for someone to listen. The next day, I tried to shake off the memory of that voice. I thought I could move forward. I met up with my boyfriend and told him I was ready. But even as I packed my things in his van, the unease hung over me like a dark cloud. I didn't sleep well that night at his place. Every shadow took on a life of its own. I felt like that apartment hadn't fully released me. At dawn, I decided to return just to grab the last few items I had left. My boyfriend offered to come, but I insisted I could handle it alone. I figured I needed closure. Walking back up the familiar creaky stairs, the memories flooded back. I hesitated in front of my old door, then unlocked it. The air felt heavy inside, like it was holding its breath. My heartbeat quickened. I forced myself to step in. I quickly grabbed a few more boxes, all the while expecting that strange scratching noise to start again, but silence blanketed the apartment. It felt too quiet. I moved through each room, assigning a mental goodbye to each familiar corner. Just as I reached for the last box in the bedroom, I noticed something out of place. The closet door was slightly ajar. I was certain I had left it closed. The hairs on my arms prickled again. I tiptoed over, my breath shallow. I pushed the door open slowly. Inside, nothing seemed amiss. My old winter coats hung there, but then I noticed something at the back, a wooden box. It wasn't mine. I had never seen it before. Intrigued and scared, I reached for it. The surface was smooth, and it felt strangely warm in my hand. Suddenly, a deep thud resonated from behind the wall again. I froze, clutching the box tightly. My heart pounded as I considered dropping it and running out. But something compelled me to stay. I flipped the box over. No opening, no latch, just a heavy engraved top. That's when I felt it, an unmistakable chill, almost like a whisper circulating through the room. It wasn't a sound, but a feeling. It prickled up my spine. Surely I had to get out now. But just before I turned towards the door, I caught a glimpse of something in the reflection from the closet mirror. There, standing behind me, was a shadow. It was human-shaped, but darker than the rest of the room. I couldn't make out any features, but I felt its presence. I gasped and stumbled backward, almost dropping the box. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there, watching me, or perhaps waiting. I finally broke into a sprint, box in hand, and bolted for the door. I flung it open and ran down the stairs 2 at a time. My heart raced as I burst out into the daylight. I didn't stop until I reached my boyfriend's car. I could feel the eyes of the shadow burning into my back even as I drove away. I didn't tell him what happened. I couldn't. But that box sat beside me in the passenger seat. Whatever was in there, I had unwittingly invited it into my new life. Now, I wonder what I unleashed. I tossed and turned that night, unable to shake the image of the shadow. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. I held the wooden box tightly against my chest, its warmth a strange comfort mixed with dread. In the morning, sunlight streamed through the window, and I thought maybe it had all been a nightmare. I decided to unpack my things and try to establish some normalcy. I took the box to the kitchen table and set it down, determined to ignore the unsettling vibe it gave off. While I was organizing my clothes, the doorbell rang. It startled me, making my heart leap. I was hoping it was my boyfriend, but when I opened the door, it was the neighbor from across the hall. She looked frazzled, her hair in disarray. "Hey, I just wanted to check on you," she said. "I heard some strange noises coming from your apartment last night. Are you okay?" Strange noises? My throat tightened. "Yeah, I'm fine," I managed, "just moving in stuff." She frowned, her eyes narrowing slightly. Moving stuff? It sounded like something was banging against the wall. I was worried. "Maybe it was just the pipes," I said, trying to dismiss it. Her concern made me feel uneasy, like there was something I didn't know. After she left, I went back to unpacking. The box seemed to draw me in, its smooth surface glinting slightly in the light. I couldn't resist any longer. I grabbed a tool from the nearby drawer, hoping to pry it open. As soon as I touched the box, another deep thud echoed through the walls. This time it was closer, louder. I froze again, tool in hand. My hands shook slightly as I imagined what might be inside the box. Then I noticed something on the wooden surface, a symbol I hadn't seen before. It was faint, almost like a carving that had been worn down. My curiosity outweighed my fear, and I ran my fingers over it. Just then, my phone buzzed on the table, breaking my concentration. It was a text from my boyfriend, asking if everything was okay. "Just unpacking," I replied, attempting to keep things light, even though my heart raced. After a moment, I felt an urge to tell him about the weird happenings. But what could I say? I didn't want to sound insane. I set my phone down and looked back to the box. It seemed to pulse with an energy, almost alive. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed through the apartment, slamming the window shut. The burst of air sent papers flying off the table. I gasped and turned, half expecting the shadow to appear again. But nothing was there, just that uneasy silence. I wasn't safe here, not with the box, not with whatever was happening. As I knelt to pick up the scattered papers, I heard a soft whispering near my ear. I jolted upright. "Leave." The word echoed in my mind. My heart pounded as I realized it didn't come from my own thoughts. I stumbled back, nearly losing balance, as the chill of fear wrapped around me tightly. I couldn't ignore it. I had to know what was happening, what I had brought with me. With trembling hands, I opened the box. That's when I saw it. Inside the box was a small mirror, its surface scratched but still reflecting the light. I blinked, momentarily entranced. It felt wrong somehow, as if it was pulling more than just light into its depths. I reached out, my fingers hovering above the glass. The moment I touched it, another wave of energy coursed through me. My heart raced. I saw my own reflection, but something was off. The reflection stared back, eyes wide, yet it felt like I wasn't in control. I jerked my hand away, gasping. "Stop it!" I shouted, not sure who I was yelling at. The air felt heavy, charged with a tension I could almost touch. Then I remembered the whisper. "Leave." It echoed in my ears, mingling with the fear swelling in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was a gateway of sorts, something that shouldn't be opened. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted my thoughts. It came from the living room, followed by a low growl that sent chills down my spine. My heart dropped. I should have run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I grabbed my phone, the only source of comfort I had, and slipped it into my pocket. Taking a deep breath, I moved towards the sound, the air thick with dread. With each step, the growl grew louder, a menacing presence that twisted my stomach. As I approached the living room, I noticed the curtains were billowing, even though all windows were shut. The air felt suffocating. I peeked around the corner, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The mirror was no longer just sitting in the box. It had been moved. It leaned against the wall, reflecting the room back at me, but the reflection wasn't accurate. It showed a flicker of shadowy shapes, figures that danced just beyond the edges of view. I stepped back, afraid to breathe. But then I heard it again, another thud. This time, it was loud enough that I could feel it reverberate in my chest, as if whatever was out there was trying to break through. My mind raced. What could it be? In a reflexive act, I dashed back to the kitchen to grab my keys. As I fumbled with them, I heard a voice, low and raspy. It echoed from the living room. "Come." It wasn't just a word. It was an invitation, or a command. My heart pounded hard against my ribs as I hesitated. My gut screamed at me to run, but there was something captivating about that voice, as if it knew me on some primal level. I glanced back over my shoulder, and to my horror, the mirror was now reflecting something that looked like a figure just behind where I stood. A shape emerged, wispy and almost transparent, but it had a face, twisted and unrecognizable. I shoved the door open, spilling into the hall. The voice still echoed behind me. Panic surged through me, urging me ahead. I could still almost hear it whispering. But I didn't want to hear it anymore. I needed to get out. But then the thought struck me. What if the figure in the mirror was still watching? I broke into a run, the thrill of the chase giving me strength as I pushed against the weight of the fear shackled to me. "Keep running," I told myself. "Just keep running." Then, just as I reached the stairs, I felt something cold grip my ankle, pulling me back. I stumbled and fell, and then everything went dark. I woke up on the floor, disoriented and breathing heavily. The darkness felt suffocating, but I quickly registered my surroundings. The living room lights flickered weakly overhead, their glow cutting through the blackness like a blade. I scrambled to sit up, my palms pressing against the hardwood floor. Pain shot through my ankle where it had been gripped just moments ago. Instinct kicked in. I pushed myself away, moving slowly at first, trying to make sense of what had happened. A shadow passed across my vision, and I froze. Hadn't I just seen something? My heart raced as I slowly turned my head back toward the mirror. It still stood there, silent and dark, the reflection distorted like a funhouse glass. But the figures within were gone. My breath caught in my throat as I realized that the only thing staring back at me was my own terrified face. My reflection looked pale and wild-eyed, and I hardly recognized the person looking back. Still, That deep, familiar voice pierced the air around me. Come. It slid through the silence, curling into my mind like vine tendrils, urging me forward again. I shook my head. No more. I couldn't let it pull me in. I forced myself to stand, teeth gritted against the pain in my ankle. Every instinct told me to leave. The urge to flee clawed at me. I hurried to the kitchen, keeping my eyes away from the mirror. As I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, I felt something cold dance across my neck. I gasped, spinning around, expecting to face whatever had pulled me down before. But nothing was there. I was alone. I let out a shaky breath, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. I glanced out the kitchen window. The night was still. The street was empty, a stark contrast to the chaos swelling in my chest. That's when I saw it. A movement behind the curtain caught my eye. I squinted, feeling the fear wash over me like ice water. I had to get out. I needed to leave this place. I shoved the door open and rushed outside. The cool night air felt refreshing yet unnerving. But as I stepped out, I froze. Standing just beyond the porch light was a figure, shrouded in darkness. It didn't seem human. Its shape was too fluid. I couldn't make out details, but I knew it was watching me, waiting. Fear sucked the breath from my lungs, and I felt rooted to the spot, paralyzed. The figure started to move closer, gliding forward, and I felt the urge to scream. Instead, I turned and ran. Back inside, the door slammed and I locked it behind me as fast as my shaking hands would allow. The growl echoed once more, this time louder, more insistent. Come. It reverberated through the walls, and my heart dropped. What was this thing? My mind raced back to the mirror, to that twisted face I had seen. There was a connection I couldn't quite understand, a thread pulling me back to that cursed glass. I had to find out what it wanted. With that thought, I reluctantly made my way back toward the mirror, uncertainty bubbling in my chest. Whatever happened next might destroy me, but I knew I had no choice. As I approached the mirror, a strange chill wrapped around me. I felt like I was walking through a fog, each step heavier than the last. The low growl still echoed in my mind, pulling me closer to that unsettling surface. I wasn't ready, but I couldn't turn back now. Once I stood before it, the darkness inside the glass seemed to swirl, pulsating softly. I blinked, trying to get a clearer view, and then it happened. The surface distorted, stretching and bending like it was alive. My heart raced as a hand reached out, an eerily familiar hand that looked just like mine, yet wasn't. It didn't fully emerge from the glass. It felt more like it was beckoning. I hesitated. Could I reach out? What would happen if I did? I could barely breathe when I heard it again, the voice whispering, "Come." But this time it was softer, almost pleading. The hand flexed, fingertips curling toward me, as if it understood my fear. A sudden pounding noise reverberated through the house. I jumped back, heart thudding erratically. It came from the front door. I spun around, dread rising in my throat. Had the figure followed me inside? I glanced back at the mirror, the hand still reaching, and my reflection stared back wide-eyed, confused. I didn't know what to do. The view in the glass warped again, and I thought I could see something dark moving behind my reflection. A sharp knock echoed, harsher this time. I held my breath, listening intently. No other sound except that insistent pounding. My instincts screamed for me to hide, to run, but there was something tethering me here. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice cracking. No response, just more knocking. I felt the walls close in, the mirror's presence urging me to make a choice. I clenched my fists and stepped forward again, ready to face the mirror. No matter the outcome, I had to know. I raised my hand cautiously toward the surface, feeling both dread and curiosity. Was I really ready to touch it? Before I could decide, another loud crash sounded from the front door, the frame shuddering. Panic surged through me. I pulled back my hand and rushed to the front room. Peering through the peephole, I squinted into the dim light outside. Nothing was there. The street remained still, an eerie silence hanging where chaos had just been. I felt a pitted sensation in my stomach. Whatever had been out there was now gone. But the moment of relief did not last. In the corner of my eye, I caught movement. The hand was still reaching through the mirror, but now it wore an angry fist. It felt like a warning. I staggered back, gasping, realizing I had made a mistake by backing away. Just then, the lights flickered, and everything went dark. The echo of "come" wrapped around me like a shroud. I was running out of time. Then I heard it. A new voice, sharper and more menacing. "You can't escape." I spun around, dread pooling in my chest. What had I just unleashed? I stood frozen in the dark, the weight of that voice pressing down on me. "You can't escape." It felt like a riddle that churned in my mind, twisting my thoughts. I strained to hear anything over my own ragged breaths, but the silence pressed against me, thick and suffocating. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm, and I felt the ground beneath me tremble. Was it my imagination, or was something shifting in the shadowy corners of my living room? I took a cautious step backward, my foot skimming the edge of the coffee table. The clatter echoed sharply in the silence, breaking the spell of stillness momentarily. With a deep breath, I turned back toward the mirror, its surface still swirling with that disquieting darkness. I had to confront whatever was happening. No backing down now. Just as I was about to take a step closer, I heard a noise behind me, a low creaking, like the groan of wood under pressure. I whipped around, but found nothing, just my empty living room yawning in the dim light. The tension hot in my chest almost made me scream. Then, without warning, the bulb above flickered back to life, illuminating the room in a harsh glow and temporarily blinding me. I blinked against it. When my vision cleared, the moment felt surreal. The world had shifted, much like that mirror. And that's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, something was peeking out from behind the curtains. A dark shape, no larger than a child. The face was obscured, but I could feel its eyes boring into me, sharp and hungry. "Who are you?" I whispered, fear creeping along my spine. It didn't move, just swayed slightly, as if beckoning me closer. I backed away slowly, but my feet felt rooted in place. My mind raced, trying to come up with a rational explanation. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, the result of too much panic and paranoia. The hand in the mirror popped up in my thoughts, and nausea churned in my stomach. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded again. The front door splintered, and I heard that sinister voice, clearer and closer now. "Let me in." I darted to the hall, half crouched, desperately trying to find a place to hide. But the mirror called to me, an insistent whisper, demanding my attention. I felt the urge to look back, but I knew that whatever was behind me couldn't be ignored. As I edged down the hallway, something cold brushed against my shoulder. I yelped and spun around, but there was nothing there, just a chill settling in the air. Panic rushed in, and I couldn't help but glance back at the mirror one last time. My own reflection stared back, but behind it, something dark flickered, something that didn't belong. And that's when everything went black again. The last things I heard were the nails scratching against the front door and the echo of that voice whispering, "Come to me." My resolve wavered. Whatever I'd unleashed, it was determined to find me. I took a step back, whispering a prayer as I felt the mirror calling louder than ever. I had no idea what choice I was about to make. Time was slipping away, and I knew I wouldn't be able to hide much longer. When I regained my senses, I was lying on the floor in the hallway. My heart was a wild drum in my chest, and the world felt skewed. I blinked against the sudden dimness, wondering if I had just dreamed the last few moments. But the scratching at the door continued, relentless and chilling. Pushing myself up, I glanced down the hall. The mirror at the end shimmered unnaturally, like a portal waiting to be opened. I forced my feet to move despite the terror that gripped me. Each step felt like a betrayal of my instincts screaming at me to run. The hallway felt different now. Shadows stretched into elongated shapes, curling and twisting like dark fingers intent on pulling me back. I stumbled forward, drawn to the mirror, a persistent pull I couldn't resist. I had to know what was happening. Suddenly, the front door splintered again, and the voice echoed through the hallway, accompanied by a rush of cold air. "Let me in." The sound was insistent, demandingly soft, like a lover calling from the dark. I pressed myself against the wall, breaths shallow and quick. I had to stay silent. I could see my reflection now, but it was barely mine. The eyes looking back at me were wide and terrified, but they were also hungry. I took an instinctive step back from the mirror, disoriented, and that's when I distinctly heard it, a whisper from the depths of the glass. "Don't be afraid." I froze again, eyes locked on the mirror surface. I didn't want to be afraid, but fear was doing all the talking. And then, to my horror, the dark figure I'd seen earlier began to emerge from the curtains, moving with a fluid grace, its shape becoming clearer. It was childlike, but the eyes, it had eyes that seemed to see through me, through everything. "Help me," it murmured, tilting its head, inviting. I shook my head, backing away further. Was this a trick? Did the thing behind the door want the same thing as the creature in the mirror? I could feel the weight of their gazes, and I knew I was caught between two horrors, each pulling, each waiting. "Come to me," the voice behind the door cooed. "You know you want to." I squeezed my eyes shut, clenching my fists at my sides. I couldn't think. I had to make a decision. I opened my eyes, barely able to breathe. But then something shifted. A crack appeared in the mirror surface, a fissure that spiderwebbed across the glass. I felt the ground beneath my feet rumble again, but this time it shook with a low, haunting vibration, like something ancient awakening. My heart raced, and dread clawed at my throat. I needed to escape this nightmare, but I didn't know where to go. That was when I noticed the crack wasn't just a crack. It was forming a doorway, right there in the glass, its edges glowing faintly. The childlike figure from the curtains stepped closer, pointing at the mirror. "I can help you. Just step inside." I hesitated, paralyzed between fear and a strange sense of urgency. But at that moment, the front door splintered wide open, crashing against the wall with a violent force. And before I could turn, something dark rushed into the hallway. I didn't know what it was, but the shadows began to swirl tighter around me. They whispered, "You belong with us." My heart sank as I realized I was now completely trapped. I pressed my back against the wall, feeling the chill of the plaster seep into my skin. The dark figure from the doorway seemed to pulse with the shadows around it, a thick amalgamation of dread and despair. I needed to move, but where? The mirror's glow felt like a beacon and a trap all at once. Without thinking, I turned my gaze back to the mirror. The childlike figure stood poised, its fingers beckoning. "Don't be afraid. We can be together." I took another step back, almost tripping over my own feet. Panic surged. I couldn't process what this figure wanted or how it was linked to the encroaching darkness behind me. Suddenly, the room brightened, the shadows fading for a brief moment. and I saw something strange. Ghostly silhouettes of other children swirling within the glassy depths. Their faces were twisted in expressions of longing mixed with something darker. They were not just lost, they wanted something from me. My stomach churned. Just then, the figure in the doorway took a step closer, still shrouded in darkness, but somehow more defined. "Join us. We can show you things." Its voice was smooth, but held an undercurrent of menace. I could hardly breathe. My instinct screamed at me to flee, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I was trapped in this moment, suspended between the mirror and the malevolent entity in the hallway. I couldn't help but consider the offer. What could be on the other side of the mirror? What secrets awaited? As if sensing my conflict, the child's voice grew more intense. "It's safe here." Its eyes glistened, reflecting an unnatural light. "Come, you don't belong with them." But just as doubt flickered in my mind, the doorframe moaned and shuddered, splintering further, as if grasping for me. My pulse quickened. If I didn't act now, the darkness would swallow me whole. In a split second, I chose. I dashed toward the mirror, the pull almost magnetic, desperate to escape from the dreadful figure in the hallway. I reached out, fingers brushing against the cool surface. Immediately, a jolt of energy coursed through me, pulling me forward. Then, everything went dark. I found myself in the midst of the darkness, surrounded by silence. I felt disoriented and weightless. Had I passed through the mirror? The air was thick, almost liquid, wrapping around me. "Where are you?" I called out, but my voice felt swallowed by the nothingness. Panic bubbled within me. Was I even alive? And then I noticed flickering lights in the distance, faint but steady. They danced like stars, each one whispering secrets I couldn't hear. I moved towards the lights, a sickening mixture of hope and dread flooding me. Each step felt like I was wading through molasses. But the moment I reached out to touch one of the glowing orbs, it flickered, pulsing like a heartbeat. That's when I felt it. The temperature dropped sharply, and I turned, heart racing. Something was behind me. I could sense it, its presence enveloping me, suffocating. I spun around, and my breath caught in my throat as those familiar childlike eyes stared back at me from the darkness. "Welcome," it whispered, the voice echoing all around me. I wanted to run, to scream, but deep down a chilling realization set in. I had walked into their world, and now there was no way back. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, paralyzed by fear, but the world around me felt utterly foreign. The once distant lights loomed closer, their glow weaving intricate patterns in the void. The air crackled with energy, drawing me in, yet it was charged with a suffocating darkness that strangled any potential for hope. "Help us," the little one urged again, its voice now layered with a chorus of echoing whispers. The other children, I realized. They'd all been waiting. I could feel their collective energy coiling around me like smoke, teasing me with promises of camaraderie. But an instinct deep within whispered to run, to fight against whatever trap I had stumbled into. "Why? What do you want?" I managed to spill from my trembling lips. They didn't reply at first. Instead, the child's face melted into a myriad of emotions, each more haunting than the last. "We just want to play," it cooed, a sinister smile creeping across its features as shadows swirled among the flickering lights. "Come join us, forever." I took a step back, my heart racing. I had to escape. The abyss behind me felt ominous, an imprint of the darkness I had witnessed before. I remembered the voice from my apartment, urging me to see, all they wanted to show me. Suddenly, a gust of frigid air washed over me, and I realized I wasn't alone. Something darker stirred in the shadows, moving toward me. My instincts kicked in, urging me to maneuver past the glowing orbs and back toward the void. I had no idea if there was anything waiting for me on the other side, or if I would be devoured by whatever darkness lingered behind. As I turned, I saw the reflection of the children in the lights, faces twisted with anticipation and desperation, their outstretched hands yearning for me to join them. I felt the pull of their longing, awakening a part of me that had been dormant for too long. "You can be one of us," they urged, their voices in unison, echoing in my skull like a haunting lullaby. "No, I don't want this," I shouted back, gaining a sense of clarity amidst the churning chaos. I stepped forward toward the lights again, only to glance briefly back into the depths of darkness. There was something writhing within, its form indecipherable but full of malevolence. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then lunged towards the lights, breaking into a sprint. I could hear the whispers around me transform into wails, cries with no sound, as I pushed through the threshold. The warmth of the light enveloped me, pulling at my very essence. There was a rush, a fierce wind engulfing me, and suddenly, light. I stumbled through what felt like a misty veil, collapsing onto the floor of my living room. The mirror behind me stood unbroken, reflecting nothing but the remnants of my wild despair. I blinked, gasping for breath, as I fumbled to my feet. The room was quiet again, with daylight streaming through the windows. I felt disoriented, adrenaline thrumming through my veins, and confusion clouding my thoughts. Had it all been an illusion? I looked toward the mirror. "Is it over?" I whispered, hoping the answer was yes. But the mirror simply reflected my ragged appearance, as if to say, the darkness was never truly gone. The doorbell rang once more, snapping me from my stupor. I leapt, expecting a sinister figure on the other side, but it was just my boyfriend, a smile on his face, looking concerned. "Hey, I just wanted to check on you. Are you okay?" It felt surreal, like I was caught between reality and an echo of what had just transpired, not fully trusting the world around me. I forced a smile, breathless as I wiped the sweat from my brow. "I'm fine, just a bad day. Let's go for a walk." As we stepped outside, I cast one last wary glance back at the mirror, but I didn't dare linger too long on its surface. The shadows might have disappeared for now, but deep down, I harbored a gnawing sense of uncertainty. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had merely closed the door on one nightmare while opening another. I moved forward, attempting to ease the burden weighing on me, but I knew in my heart that the children were still waiting, somewhere at the edges of reality, perhaps even closer than I dared admit. Whatever forces of darkness lurked, they would always find their way back, and I wasn't sure what might happen next. But that would have to wait for another day. For now, I simply walked on, the weight of the unknown pressing against me like a shroud.